Welcome to the newest dialogue in politics, community news, human interest stories, entertainment, and information from Eastern North Carolina. Janet Conner-Knox is an award-winning journalist with more than 25 years experience in print, radio, and television. This is Talking with Janet.
I'm Janet Conner-Knox, and I'm sitting here with Senator Angela Bryant, who is the Democratic candidate and running for re-election. Her opponent is Republican Richard Scott, and the race is on. I mean, November will be here just like that, and so we're glad that you took time to come here and be with us. And I guess the first thing I'd like to talk about, as I talked about with Mr. Scott, is that the whole country seems to be looking at North Carolina. It used to be perceived as a progressive state, and now it's getting the same kind of scrutiny, it seems, that Alabama and Mississippi did in the 1960s. And people who are happy with the changes that took place in the legislature are saying it's much needed changes. Republicans haven't been in power for over 100 years, and they needed to get the budget together. Folks who disagree with all of that say that some of those changes were mean-spirited, that Medicaid cut out hundreds of thousands of people, unemployment, changed things where families are insecure with their salaries for just a few weeks, and that money is going someplace. So there is a definite change. What do you think about the legislature? What did they do good? What did they need improvement on? Your critique.
Well, you've put a lot in that question. And,
I did.
For a start, some of the national attention we got was because of some of the extreme measures that this Republican supermajority legislature and now governor's branch have done in North Carolina, starting with the voter suppression tactics that they took. Everything from the monster voter bill that cut back our early voting, required the most restrictive voter initially the most restrictive voter identification regime in the country, eliminated all the aspects of voting that were predominantly used or exercised by the disproportionately in high numbers by the African American community, such as straight ticket voting, out of precinct voting, eliminating all of the electoral practices that tended to favor the African American and low income communities. That got national attention, mostly through the Moral Mondays movement. And you add to that the failure to expand Medicaid, a lot of the women's health and anti-choice legislation that was done to restrict women's access to health care, and requiring women to watch an ultrasound and against their will, and these kind of coercive provisions. And then you top that off with HB 2, which restricted all of our legal rights to challenge discrimination in the workplace under the guise of protecting women and children in the bathroom from transgender persons. That just topped the
Yes, it did.
Was the icing on the cake in terms of us getting the national attention of just being an extremist state. So you're right that describes the battle we face in this legislature over the last, I guess, 3 terms since we've faced this supermajority, and it is an extremist philosophy that we're facing on every side. And part of the difficulty is in this in serving in this environment is that a lot of the work is in fighting back against these extreme measures and working to moderate them as much as possible, while at the same time opposing them and exposing them as much as we can. And so that is sort of the role of the Democratic minority in this case.
Well, no matter what you do, you can't get a bill passed, am I correct? Because there is such a supermajority?
Well, there are even in this environment some things that can be done in conjunction with the majority. So it would be, I would be mistaken to imply that something can't be done. For example, affecting us locally was the bill to sell the electricity's assets to Duke Progress, which was something that we have been working on in our region in the eastern North Carolina for years in terms of tackling the electricity's situation, and the fact that we were generating our own electricity through shares of these nuclear power plants and coal plants with costs that we really couldn't maintain given our size and the size of the electricity's component. And so it was raising our utility rates far beyond what we could afford. And so we have been looking for a solution, and the merger of Duke Energy and Carolina and Progress Energy gave us the opportunity to solve that problem. And so that was an example of something we were able to do on a bipartisan basis. So there are those kind of initiatives that that we are able to do on a
And since we're talking about that, have your constituents called you and said my electric bills are much better? I would see people who would say I have a choice of paying my bills, paying my mortgage, or paying my electric bill. The electric bills were higher than mortgage rates were,
yes.
and there were elderly people who just said I can't take it. They were coming out asking for help and they never helped. So now that that has taken place, we were told that there would be a rollback pretty soon. Has there been?
In every case, the electric rates have been reduced.
Okay.
In every electricity, it's very, and they are local. The nature of the electricity's model is that the utilities are controlled by the municipal governments involved. So they have been reduced at varying rates, but every municipality has reduced rates. Are they reduced enough? Or they reduced as much as we wish they were reduced? No. But all the reports I've seen show that our rates are competitive now with the Duke Progress, Dominion, the other electrical providers in the region. We are competitive, and before we were not. We were way out of sync with the other providers. So our electric costs are no longer a major cause of concern. Now there are other drivers to unfair electric costs beyond the cost of the power itself, such as the nature of our housing stock and our capacities to provide energy efficient and affordable housing in our communities. So in Wilson, in Rocky Mount, in all of the counties I represent, that is the next frontier. We do need to be more aggressive in trying to get affordable housing plans, affordable housing projects on the table and implement it. And that's been a spotty process, and it needs to be improved. Surely, I've been to several meetings here, and you've been with me to meetings in Wilson and East Wilson, I think is the description, where there's not significant enough community development dollars being spent and projects being implemented. And Wilson, the city, is struggling in the sense that they are just below the population level to make them what would be called an entitlement community, where they would get their own community development dollars from the federal government and could then plot their own path with community development. They have to compete with all of the other smaller cities and towns in the state and apply for funding through the Department of Commerce through the state CDBG program. Now, one of the negative things, for example, that this legislature has done is they have stripped all housing monies from the community development block grant funding and are using it strictly for infrastructure purposes as related to job development.
Okay, so what did it do before and what does it do now?
Before, there were monies, CDBG monies at the minimum, that were available on a rotating basis to all the communities who were a part of the state community development block grant program. They could, on a rotating basis, be assured of getting some kind of housing development monies that could be used for demolition of dilapidated structures, for various grant and or loan improvement programs, depending on what their needs were and what they wanted to apply for. That money was available on a rotating basis. That was one part. And then there were other housing initiatives that could also be applied for as a part of the of other community development block grant programs. But the Republican legislature has eliminated all housing monies in the community development block grant programs, which is basically crippling our small towns and cities like Wilson and smaller in terms of having any kind of housing efforts. Now, in order to do housing, all of it has to be done through the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, which we are not funding as much as that they were funded previously, and they have a combination of state and federal dollars, and on a competitive basis fund housing development projects around the state. It's a great agency, one of the best in the country, but that approach alone does not meet the kind of housing needs we have.
We're here with Senator Angela Bryant. We'll be right back after this.
Hey everybody, it's me, Tommy Ford. What's up, dog? I want to extend to you a very, very special invitation to join me as we celebrate my dear friend and brother, Jesse Radalis. He's an Olympic artist and he is absolutely amazing. So, we're having an artist reception on September the 10th. I want to share something very special with you. I have known this brother for more than 20 years. And in 20 years, I'm telling you, I've never met anyone more amazing. It's rare that you see an artist whose heart is as pure as his brush. So I want you to join me at this very special reception at the Downing Cross Cultural Arts Center in Newport News, Virginia. To RSVP, just call 757-247-8950 or go to www.jesseradalis.com. See you at the exhibit, dog.
We're back with Senator Angela Bryant, who is running for District 8. Is it
District 4?
District 4.
Senate
I'm sorry,
District 4.
Senate District 4. And it covers how many counties?
5 counties: Halifax, Vance, and Warren, all of them, and part of Nash and Wilson County.
Can I ask you one quick question about that? Don't you think that if you're going to cover a county, it should be the whole county? What part of the county? I mean, I know you don't draw those lines, but
that's a whole different conversation. But
yeah.
Yes, well, there is a magic number in accordance with the census. Every senator has to have the same number of constituents, citizens in the district.
Okay.
And I think it's around 190,000 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And you can vary by a certain margin of error. And so because of that, counties are often split, and there are several rules in redistricting that apply. One that does apply in North Carolina is the whole county provision. So where they can pair whole counties together and accomplish the numbers we need, that would be a priority. So you are required to make all the whole county pairings you can. The other requirement is the Voting Rights Act. So where you are required to create majority minority districts under the Voting Rights Act, that would also be one exception to whole counties, and I'm in one of those majority-minority districts. Now there have been some changes in the Voting Rights Act, as well as we have some redistricting lawsuits filed, one of which is criticizing the fact that they created these supermajority black districts, that is, black districts that are packed, that have
packed
more
and stacked,
African Americans in them than is probably required to give African Americans a fair chance to elect a candidate of their choice in areas where we have historically been prohibited from that because we haven't been getting the support of whites.
We're going to come back in another time, because we're certainly going to have you come back and we're going to talk about that, because that's really important for the folks who look at this to know, because the whole point is to give information so that you're better able making choices when you go to the voting booth.
So where you see counties, districts that are not whole counties, it's either because the numerical number could not be hit, or because of the Voting Rights Act and the need to have a certain proportion of African Americans and white voters in order to meet those requirements.
The criteria.
Where you see those situations.
Let's talk about House Bill 2, and it's gotten a lot of attention from everywhere. And I think that when I first heard about House Bill 2, before I got a chance to read it for myself, everyone was talking about the transgender thing in the bathroom, and I remember thinking, I've never ran into anybody in the bathroom. I've never, in all of my, and I won't say how many years I am old, but I've never run into anybody in the bathroom. It's never been an issue for me.
And are you going to be checking? Are you
going to be
checking when you do run into them?
No.
I mean, are you in a position to even check?
I don't think so.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and I immediately got on the phone and started calling other people I know and said, issue for you? Nobody had that as an issue, but it has come up. What is House Bill 2?
Well, I just wanted to make the point that a lot of these initiatives, whether it's House Bill 2, voter ID, they use a strategy that will tantalize our prejudices, if you will. Tantalize particularly the prejudices of their base, and even farther beyond, as a subterfuge for doing something underneath that's even more evil or nefarious. For example, they are claiming that they're concerned about predators in bathrooms attacking women and girls, where we have no evidence of that. But the meat of this bill is not about the bathrooms. It is about protecting private employers from any lawsuits for discrimination for any purpose, not just for gays or for transgender people, for gay people or transgender people. And so they are counting on our prejudice, particularly in the black community, against transgender and gay people to be so blinding that we would give up our own rights to sue for discrimination because we want to keep those people out of the bathroom and those people out of our businesses, and ultimately maybe those people out of jobs. In addition to that, tacked onto this bill is limiting the rights of local governments to set minimum wage requirements for doing business with them or for companies in their jurisdiction, and setting other kind of anti-discrimination practices or ordinances or standards that meet the sensibilities of their own communities. So that was the other purpose. So really the purpose of the bill was to restrict local governments and private individuals from suing businesses for discrimination purposes. And the subterfuge, or the front, if you will, was we gotta keep these transgender people who will really be sexual predators, whatever subset there is of those that are, from attacking women and children and in schools. So, and the law only addresses bathrooms in public agencies and public schools and university, in universities and community colleges, etc. Not in private businesses, but it protects private businesses from being sued for employment discrimination if they would so choose to not employ or to limit your bathrooms or whatever if you work for them. And also it limits their responsibility for equity in public accommodations to biological sex. So they aren't by state law required to provide equal access to public accommodations for people who are transgender, and definitely sexual orientation is not included.
We're gonna come right back and talk about education.
Why are you here?
Just want to shoot some hoops.
I want to know why you're being all distant.
I just have things on my mind.
What things?
I don't want to talk about it.
We don't keep secrets.
I'm sorry, I tried to stop it.
I have to talk to you. It's an emergency. I'm kind of freaking out right now. I mean, I'm a man. I should have been able to stop it, and I couldn't. What happened? All I know is that it was something bad. What the hell is wrong with you?
I believe something happened. Just don't know what.
I would never cheat on her. I never hurt her. Can you imagine the ridicule and embarrassment I had to go through?
We're back with Senator Angela Bryant, who is running to keep her seat in 5 counties. And wanted to talk to you a little bit about education. Nobody wants to be against education. Everybody, the pro-education governor, the pro. It's important to know what our legislators voted for and against. And Richard Scott tells me that you voted against the budget and you cut education in 2009. Let's take a look and see exactly what Richard Scott said about your voting record.
Because Angela Bryant voted to cut the education in 2009. She voted not to give the teachers pay in 2012. So yes, I agree with you on that.
I don't know anything about Angela's record.
Well, I'm just saying I do.
I thought she was doing a fine job for the area that she represented.
Look at the voting record then.
Okay, let's talk about your voting record. What happened in 2009? Did you vote?
In 2009, we were in the midst of the biggest recession we've ever had. And we had to cut our budget across the board in every area. And of course, education is the biggest part of the state budget. And so we did cut the budget, but our goal was to keep teachers employed and children in reasonable sized classrooms with the supplies and textbooks and assistance as best we could that we could afford under the circumstances, and we were able to do that. We felt like we made a monumental accomplishment in 2009 to not lay off teachers, which was our goal. And so I disagree with him. I think he's again using what is a truthful fact out of context to somehow say I'm not for education. In every term I have run, I've been supported by the North Carolina Association of Educators. I've had the full support of my school boards for the whole time that I have been running, and of my constituents in the community around education. I fought for teachers, for teacher assistants, for students. Really worked hard. I was a pioneer in helping to reduce the dropout rate. Was a co-sponsor of the dropout prevention program that we had as Democrats that brought dropout prevention best practices into a community-based strategy. We took the strategy out of DPI and the state board and the schoolhouse and put it into the community and asked the communities to be accountable for reducing the dropout rate and keeping our kids in school. And the communities across the state stepped up to the plate, which is why we have some of the best graduation rates we've had now in the history of North Carolina. It was a result of those initiatives. And yes, in 2012, I voted against the Republican budget and it's the funding schema that they use for teachers, because it was unfair to our veteran teachers, and the budget wasn't even supported by teachers. So they again create some raise scheme here or there for some teachers. And of course, the raise scheme, if you remember, that it was connected with giving up tenure and due process rights, and it's always a hook or a crook to what their education efforts are. And that same budget had in it the beginning of vouchers and funding vouchers in North Carolina, unlimited charter school.
So you're saying you didn't vote against that, you voted against the budget that you felt
I voted against the budget that included whatever increase they provided for teachers, which was inadequate and was opposed by teachers themselves.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about as you've worked for your constituents in the House, and now you're in the Senate. Why vote for Senator Angela Bryant when you go into the booth?
Well, one of the reasons is experience that I have. I will this year be completing my 10th year, my 5th term, and so I know the business of the legislature. I know how to read the budget. I know where to look for the important parts. I know how to amend it. I know how to negotiate with the key players on how to make changes in it. I know how to support my constituents in solving their problems with state government because of the time I've been there, the relationships I have, and my knowledge of it. We offer great constituent services and get rave reviews from all our constituents about the services our office provides when they come to us with problems. I think all of my local government, I represent 20-some towns and 5 counties, and each of them have expressed satisfaction with the representation they have received and with the advocacy they have requested as they have faced issues, and we have worked to attempt to address in every case the priorities of each of our counties as best we can. I am a fighter for families and jobs, for people who are lower wealth, for rural communities, for businesses, for economic development across the board. I serve on the Natural and Economic Resources Appropriations Committee, for agriculture, which is a big component in our community. So I am an advocate in all of those key areas, and definitely for children.
We're out of time. Need to say, if somebody wants to know more about your campaign, where can they look? Where can they go? AngelaBryant.com is a way to it's the easiest way to contact me and find out more about me, my campaign, and to reach me. Thank you so much for watching. Senator Angela Bryant, she's running for office. Her opponent is Republican Richard Scott. Go online, find out about candidates before you vote for them. No, you've got from now till November. Look it up, see what they're talking about, see if what they're saying is what you want. Thank you very much.
If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on Talking with Janet, please contact us by email, brothersideent@gmail.com. Leave your name and contact information. Without that, your guest will not be considered.
This has been a Brotherside Entertainment production.